You know, these videos are relatively easy for me to make. You know, they're quite low effort, all things considered, when I actually sit down to decide to start them. Because, you know, it's basically just me talking for anywhere from like 15 minutes to 40 minutes about something I already know a lot about. And I just need to do some basic reading before I start them. So I was about to start the Tzimisce video. I'm gonna edit this in. I was about to start it, and it occurred to me, maybe I should actually figure out what the fuck their disciplines are before I start talking, instead of, like, doing what I was 100% gonna end up doing, and, like, do it in the middle of the video. Hoot hoot, everyone. Hello, everyone. It's me, Ethan, that there Turbo Owl, and I'm just here with another episode of that there Tabletop Tall Tales rambling guide to Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition. I've been streaming VTMB a lot recently, so I keep wanting to say Bloodlines there, but it's just Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition, and today I'm finally going to get around to a video that I've been saying I was going to make for, I think, about a year, and it's not going to be worth the wait, because it's going to have exactly the same amount of effort that all of the other videos have, which is to say, I've written some very basic notes, and other than that, I'm just going to ramble for a bit. Really shouldn't have taken me a year, but if you didn't already know, I'm quite lazy. And yes, I had decided to put it off recently, because initially it's because I wanted that poster done, then it's because I wanted this tattoo done, and then it was because I wanted to finish reading Law of the Clans, because I started reading it and realised that each of the different, you know, sections on the clans in here actually gave me quite some good insight into the clans that I didn't have before. There's some stuff in here that I didn't actually already know. Tzimisce did not add anything. Remarkably, when I got to the Tzimisce section, after learning a lot about basically every clan that came before that, the Tzimisce, it was just what I already knew. Same with the Malkavian, actually, which, you know, my two favourite clans, kind of checks out. Although, actually, the Tzimisce probably aren't my one of my favourite clans anymore. They're still up there, but I think my two favourite clans right now are probably still number one, Malkavian. You know, kind of have to. And the Nosferatu, actually. Purely because, well, I realised there weren't any secret hidden depths, whereas I've seen a lot of stuff that's allowed me to re-examine the other clans. He does this on purpose. I swear to God, he waits until I'm doing something and then decides he wants a drink. So, today, we're going to talk about the Tzimisce. I will say, I do also now have this guy. He will appear somewhere on the screen if I remember to edit him in. This is the new mascot for all of my shit. I'm going to try and put him in the Tabletop Tall Tales stuff. Somewhere, don't lick my new tattoo, Tim. But I don't know exactly, like, where or how, and it's kind of, like, on the bottom of my priorities. But he's here, and he's gonna get put somewhere in the branding of this channel. Also, I do have a new tattoo. If it looks gross, that's because it's quite new, so it's, you know, it's going through kind of it's going through the second gross stage of tattoo healing, where it's not pissing ink everywhere, but it is peeling, so, yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, I mean, that's vaguely appropriate for a video talking about the Tzimisce. So, what are the Tzimisce? The Tzimisce are one of the main clans in the Vampire the Masquerade series. I don't know why I said main clans. Clans, by definition, are the main groups. They're one of the not independent clans, I guess, is what I'm saying. One of the major powers. They are typically considered to be one of the primary antagonist factions, primary antagonist species of vampires in the setting, given that, by and large, if you're playing a game of Vampire the Masquerade, you are probably going to be playing either a Camarilla game or an Anarch game, and the Tzimisce are one of the two clans that make up the only native clans of the Sabbat. They are noted for their unique discipline of vicissitude, which is, frankly, a topic all in and of itself, because it has bizarre depths to it, and I will touch on that a bit later. They are strange, inhuman even by the standards of vampires, midnight aristocracy. essentially old world nobility, by and large, who have taken to unlife in a way that few other vampires can. In fact, it is worth noting that they play host to... Their clan counts among its numbers, although I'm not sure if he's still alive in canon. It counts among its numbers the most famous vampire in history, Dracula. And unlike the case with some historical figures who were turned into vampires, or were claimed to have been turned into vampires by various clans, there is no debate. Vlad Tepes Dracul is a member of Clan Tzimisce in the World of Darkness lore. In fact, actually, I always wondered who, hang on, that is supposed to be, because that poster, it's kind of hard to see. Let me pull it up. You see there? There, that's the Tzimisce. That's some art of the Tzimisce. And I always wondered who the fuck that guy is, and why he's the poster, given that the Tzimisce are famous for kind of looking like, you know, flesh monsters because of their flesh crafting. That's supposed to be Dracula. Dracula is noted as, while he is a flesh crafter Tzimisce, doesn't really do it to himself much. And, yeah, it should have occurred to me that that too is supposed to be, given that there is, you know, spooky mountain range, fog, and it's kind of hard to make out on the camera, but in that piece of art, there is a head on a fucking pike in the background. They couldn't really have made it more obvious if you know that Dracula is a member of Clan Tzimisce, that that's supposed to be Dracula, but, well, such is life. They are also noted for having an ability of another unique discipline known as Coldunic Sorcery, although that is something that is no longer inherent in the main line of the Tzimisce. Rather, I believe that is the domain of the old clan Tzimisce, who are effectively the Tzimisce anti-tribu. It is also worth noting, I will essentially very quickly go through the basics here of what they are, in terms of, like, mechanically. They have 3 disciplines, as do most of the clans. There are some that have more, but there's 1 or 2 that have more. But as with most of the vampire types, they have 3 disciplines, those being Auspex. They're another one of the Auspex gang, which makes up, I think, something like 1/3 of all vampire clans have Auspex. They have Auspex, they have Animalism, which, again, leads itself to the Dracula thing. My children of the night, what music they make, because he can talk to fucking wolves. And, of course, Vicissitude. As I said, they are most notable for their abilities, with Vicissitude, which is one of, if not necessarily the most interesting discipline, it is one of the most interesting disciplines, if you ask me, both for the sheer width and breadth of things that you can theoretically do with it, based on the vague way that even the mechanical aspects of Vicissitude are described. It is very much the sky's the limit in regards to what you can get away with. It's what your own imagination will allow you, and what the storyteller won't tell you to fuck off about. Unfortunately, if you're in a game run by me, there's quite a lot I'd tell you to fuck off about, because I've abused Vicissitude myself, so I know the kind of bullshit that people can pull with Vicissitude if a storyteller isn't being careful with what they're doing. Their clan weakness... Give me a moment. Hey! Their clan weakness is a bit of a peculiar one. They are required to, again, sticking with kind of a very old-school vampire tropes, a lot of the detail about the Tzimisce outside of Vicissitude does involve them leaning quite heavily into old-school vampire tropes. Again, Dracula, literally a member of the clan. And their clan weakness is that they are required to sleep in, I believe it's 2 handfuls, or sleep with 2 handfuls of dirt from their native land. Or, well, it's described as native soil. It doesn't necessarily have to be soil from the place, you know, the land that they were born. It has to be soil from a place that mattered to them as a mortal. So it could very well be the land that they lived in before they died. It could be the soil of the place that they died, or an important graveyard. You know, it could be many different things, but it has to be soil from one specific place, and if you don't do that, you start taking increasingly bad penalties for every night that you do not sleep in your native soil. I can't remember exactly mechanically what the penalty. I literally just checked this before I started recording, but I've forgotten. I immediately forgot what the mechanics of it are. Each night spent without this physical connection to her land limits all the Tzimisce's dice pools to 1/2 cumulatively until she has only a single die in her pool. So it literally halves your ability. It halves your dice pool every single night over and over again until you can only roll 1 die. That's kind of fucking wild. And it also makes the fact that the Lasombra's clan weakness is just they don't appear in, they don't have reflections, all the more bullshit. Seriously, the Tzimisce get that and the Lasombra get a 1-dot flaw. It's bullshit. It's why I change it in my campaign. But yeah, that's essentially the broad strokes of them as a clan, ignoring their role in the Sabbat. They have animalism, auspex, and vicissitude. They are old-school vampire tropes combined with John Carpenter's The Thing levels of grotesque body horror, and they are just fucked up enough in the head that they barely seem to notice the horror of what they're doing. And they've got a lot of old-school, ancient, like, old-world aristocracy vibes tied up into that. Now, we're gonna just start going down my list of notes here of things to discuss, and the first thing I've got to discuss is, well, something I need to get rid of right there is Dracula, because I talked about that in the fucking opening. So here we go. Their role in the setting. As I believe I mentioned before, their role in the setting is one that is largely going to be an antagonistic one. They are effectively they're one of the 2 founding clans of the Sabbat, along with the Lasombra. But they take a role in the Sabbat that doesn't really have a direct comparison in the Camarilla. The Lasombra, of course, take the role of the Ventru, essentially, in the Sabbat, in that they are the kings and king-makers. They are the politicians of the Sabbat, as far as they have them. The Tzimisce, however, tend to be, for lack of a term, like the priests more than anything else. They are, if the Lasombra are the political backbone of the Sabbat, the Tzimisce are the spiritual heart of the Sabbat, which is worrying because the Tzimisce are deeply fucked up in a way that no other clan except like the Barley bloodline can be considered fucked up. The Tzimisce are grim and disturbed even by the standards of the Sabbat. Likely that's why, actually, they end up being the spiritual heart. Gotta keep them on the straight and narrow of being absolute fucking nightmares. The Tzimisce find themselves in a position to act as villains, both major and minor, in campaigns, for the simple reason that they are both monster makers through the use of vicissitude, and, well, they make themselves monsters, again, through the use of vicissitude. They are almost always on paths of enlightenment rather than on humanity, and they have almost no anti-tribu. I used to believe that they had no anti-tribu and that it was an explicit rule. Since reading Law of the Clans, which does actually discuss the anti-tribu as well of each clan, it's since been revealed that the Tzimisce, the standard flesh-crafting Tzimisce, do actually have anti-tribu. It's just because of their inherently alien mindset, they don't tend to operate with the Camarilla very much. They tend to be independent or autarchis, or even anarchs, before they will be members of the Camarilla, although that does happen. Although even then, that only happens very rarely, and only happens for short periods of time, all things considered, due to the long-standing hatred the Tremere have of the Tzimisce, and vice versa. It is quite likely that any Tzimisce who is granted citizenship within the Camarilla is allowed to be a member of the Camarilla, would not survive very long after they stopped being directly useful. And as such, what few Fleshcrafter Tzimisce and tribu there are tend to do whatever business they had to conduct with the Camarilla and then skedaddle quite quickly in order to avoid being butchered. There are, however, also the old clan Tzimisce, who are the closest equivalent to anti-tribu. They are more common, however, they are also incredibly isolationist, and typically quite old, as the name suggests. They essentially, or at least they claim, to predate the Tzimisce's adoption of vicissitude, and as such retain their old habit of using Coldonic sorcery. They claim that vicissitude is the creation of a demonic entity, and as such they will not hold truck with it. They do not care for vicissitude by and large, and that's why they never adopted it. Because even among vampires, infernalism, the summoning and working of demons, is considered fucking hell. Sorry, my own fucking notification just made me jump a mile. It's my own fault for having it be the Faith Mortis thing. That's the thing, I always have my phone on silent. I decided to stop having it on silent. I keep making myself jump at my fucking skin. But even among vampires, infernalism, diabolism, dealing with demons is considered taboo. Even the Tremere look down on it, although generally the Tremere will only punish you if you're caught doing it. And they won't look too hard, because, the Tremere are nightmares. It's also why every single sect hunts the Barley. Because no one wants demons around. And the Barley are actively summoning demons, so, yeah, everyone hunts the Barley. Whether or not vicissitude is actually the spawn of a demon is a different question entirely. A lot of what the Tzimisce believe about themselves does involve some kind of demonic entity existing in the land around the Carpathian Mountains, but again, whether or not that's true is very much up in the air, and as is the case with World of Darkness, the truth is very much what the storyteller decides it to be, because there are many conflicting arguments and debates and points of view, and there is no evidence as to which one is more true than the other than the preference of the storyteller at the time. Yeah, vicissitude could be demonic. It could also just be the grotesque will of their founder. Yes. They use their vicissitude, the main clan of Tzimisce, to both make themselves into horrifying abominations and create hordes of horrifying abominations. Very good for making memorable, monstrous mooks and all that kind of thing. Despite this horrifying mindset, this horrifying way of being, the Tzimisce are also noted for being incredibly fucking polite, almost to the point of madness. The Tzimisce, and this is a holdover from their time as Old World aristocracy, because as you may have been able to figure out from what I've been saying, from the fact that they're something heavily associated with them is in the Carpathian Mountains, and the fact that Dracula is a Tzimisce, the old holdings, the strongholds of the Tzimisce clan, at least historically, I think it's now mostly populated by the old clan, not the modern flesh-crafting Tzimisce, but the old strongholds of the Tzimisce clan were Transylvania, Romania, those kind of parts of Eastern Europe. And in that part of the world, for much of their history, the Tzimisce operated openly as I mentioned, a kind of midnight aristocracy, or kind of a known quantity. The peasants may not have known exactly what their masters were, but they had a good notion that their masters were at least in some way supernatural, and would essentially offer sacrifices not just of taxes and labour, but of blood and flesh, in order to keep their nobility sated, and to fulfill the age-old supposed contract between a noble and their peasantry, that in exchange for the peasant sacrifices, the noble will protect them. And it is in these old castles that many of the Tzimisce would find themselves making horrible, horrible monsters. But it is from these castles, from this history as respected and elegant nobles, surrounded by, both the gothic horror of their surroundings, but also the pomp and circumstance that came with their titles, that they developed this intense sense of hospitality. Essentially, if you present yourself formally to the door of a Tzimisce, it is almost certain that as long as they are a Tzimisce who still holds to this habit, it is less likely among younger Tzimisce, but it is still a very present thing in the culture of the clan. If you present yourself to their domain and throw yourself upon their hospitality, they will, even if you are an enemy of theirs, protect you for 3 days. You are their guest for 3 days, and they will feed you, house you, and show you every courtesy as is required to show a guest. However, after those 3 days, if they ask you to leave, you'll be permitted to leave without being killed. If you stay after they have asked you to leave, however, at that point, hospitality ends, which can cause many people to find themselves in situations where their incredibly polite, friendly host, who just moments ago was practically throwing themselves at the feet throwing themselves at the feet of their guest, these guests will be quite surprised to find themselves being butchered and quite possibly eaten by that self-same generous host. It is a most peculiar thing. Coming to the flesh crafting of the Tzimisce, they are most noted for 2 things. First is the Schlachter, and then are the Vozd, and a third, actually, that I should mention, are Revenants, which I will touch on very briefly. I do plan on making a video on ghouls, in which case the Schlachter, Vozd, and Revenants will come up again, because they are all variants of it. Essentially, Schlachter and Vozd are unique forms of ghouls that are created by the flesh crafting Tzimisce. The Schlachter have the greatest variance within them, for the simple reason that Schlachter is less a specific thing, and more almost just the term that Tzimisce use for ghouls. I think it means something like vassal, in whatever language it's from. I may be wrong, but I remember someone telling me that, but I'm not sure, and I didn't look it up before I started. But the reason that it's worth pointing out is that because the Tzimisce are flesh crafters, most of their ghouls, if not all, will have some degree of flesh crafting done to them. Be that the transparently obvious, as is the case in Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, with those horrible heads on legs that run around in the warrens. Those are implied to be Schlachter, rather than vampires, even though they burst into flames. But then again, vampires don't burst into flames in Vampire the Masquerade, so who the fuck knows? I'm still reeling from the realization that vampires don't dust when they die in Vampire the Masquerade. I never checked it, because I assumed Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines knew what it was talking about, at least in that regard, and it fucking doesn't, which is wild. But those are Schlachter. Equally, however, a Schlachter could have very unobvious augmentations, very unobvious vicissitudings. It could literally just be their appearance mildly altered. They've got the face of a different person. Perhaps the Tzimisce wants all their ghouls to look identical, so they'll give their Schlachter the same. Each of them has the same facial features. Schlachter is essentially just a Tzimisce ghoul, but if you are ever dealing with a Schlachter, it is worth being on your guard, because they won't definitely have capabilities outside of that of the standard ghoul. However, it is always possible that they will. They are a concern, certainly. Vozd are a much more specific thing. They are also known as war ghouls. They are a peculiar thing created by, I think specifically there has to be an elder Tzimisce to create a Vozd successfully, because it involves both a high degree of skill in vicissitude and a high degree of skill with Coldonic sorcery, which really only the older side of the Tzimisce clan still have access to Coldonic sorcery as well as vicissitude. Generally, it's one or the other, unless you're relatively older and powerful. Or unless you've managed to, I don't know, kidnap an old clan Tzimisce and force him to teach you Coldonic sorcery. The Vozd are, to put it as bluntly as I can, abominations from Warcraft. They are stitched together monstrosities where the Tzimisce has used vicissitude to stitch together the bodies of many, many ghouls to create a large, nightmarish conglomeration, and then given it a single sentience through Coldonic sorcery, creating a new and horrifying creature. They are often used as guards to protect the secrets and havens of Elder Tzimisce, and they are always a absolute nightmare to deal with, both because of their appearance and because of their sheer capacity in combat. If you find yourself facing up against a Vozd, number one, you will fucking know, because you will likely be asking yourselves, what on God's green earth is that giant fucking thing lumbering towards me? And number two, it'll probably kick your ass. You will know that you are dealing with a very serious Tzimisce if you find yourself on the receiving end of a Vozd. The Tzimisce are also very big fans of one specific path of enlightenment, one which is very common among their clan, and one which is occasionally found outside of their clan, but it is one that essentially comes with the territory of vicissitude, and that is the path of metamorphosis. The path of metamorphosis is essentially, imagine, I can't remember the character's name, I think it was something Dollar Hyde, but the antagonist of the film Red Dragon, the Hannibal Lecter movie Red Dragon. It's essentially what that guy believed, that he would be able to, through horrifying acts and physical transformation, he'd be able to turn himself into an ascended being. That is essentially the path of metamorphosis. The Tzimisce, typically, those who are on the path, believe that through both acts that alter themselves mentally and spiritually, as well as the use of vicissitude and other powers to alter their forms, they will be able to push themselves not just beyond humanity, but beyond the bounds of even what is physically possible and psychologically possible for Canaanites. Typically, this is typically why the Tzimisce tend to seem as alien as they do, and the existence of vicissitude and it being at your fingertips kind of leads you towards this kind of thinking, towards this kind of path. I'd be willing to say that most Tzimisce who use flesh crafting to any real degree are almost certainly going to be on the path of metamorphosis. It is essentially seeking ascension through transformation at any cost, and you are required to essentially destroy anyone who gets in the way of your attempts to ascend to whatever lies beyond. It is worth noting that vicissitude, and actually Tzimisce himself, the antediluvian, are pretty fucking weird. As I mentioned before, vicissitude is believed by some members of specifically the old clan of Tzimisce to be essentially the creation of demonic entities, therefore infernalism, therefore horrible. Others believe it is a simple discipline, others believe it is a disease, and others believe it is the will of Tzimisce himself, or itself, I should say, moving through his children. Suffice it to say, whichever one of those answers is true, vicissitude is a fucking strange discipline, even more so than, say, dementation, or obtenetration, or whatever the fuck the Barley discipline's called, demon magic. It better not just be called Dark Thaumaturgy. I'm pretty sure Dark Thaumaturgy is something else, but it better not. That might be what it's called. I'd need to read the Barley stuff again. This isn't the Barley video, leave me alone. Vicissitude, regardless of where this comes from, seems to have something of a mind of its own. Inside a Tzimisce, vicissitude is controlled, vicissitude is calm, compliant, and it behaves itself. When adopted by clans other than the Tzimisce, vicissitude appears to almost rebel against the blood of the clan it's in. It can cause horrible things to happen, both mentally and physically, to the person who is attempting to learn it. It struggles against them until they are able to master it in a way that few other disciplines can. In fact, if I remember correctly, depending on the means by which you acquire vicissitude, vicissitude can just straight up kill you the first time you try and use it, if it is not a native discipline of yours. It is a fucking peculiar discipline. It is believed, as I said, that there are many options, but one of the primary ones, one of the main ones that I think is most likely, is that it is weird because of Tzimisce, because Tzimisce himself is believed to essentially be working through vicissitude and attempting to learn and perfect his own command of the discipline by essentially having his children experiment on themselves and on each other and on others while watching their experiments through their eyes. Much like it is believed that dementation is an extension of MacLeod, vicissitude is, it seems to be, an extension of the Tzimisce antediluvian, who, by some accounts, according to the Tzimisce themselves, according to the Sabbat Tzimisce certainly, their antediluvian is dead. However, there are many who believe that he lives on in each of his children. It is essentially theorized that the Tzimisce Antediluvian has made the Tzimisce as a clan become essentially a one-sided hive mind, where he has access to all of them, but that link is one-sided, unlike the difficult-to-manage two-way bombardment of radio chatter that is the hive mind of the Malkavians. The Tzimisce are simply constantly on send and never on receive, which may very well be why the discipline of vicissitude struggles so much when inside the bodies of non-Tzimisce, because the Antediluvian perhaps does not want them to have it, or perhaps it simply isn't meant to work in blood other than his. This, I will grant, has been a somewhat confused video. I made it on a whim, just before bed, because I wrote my notes and felt like I knew enough to talk about it. Hopefully you were able to follow it. I think I hit most of the basic points about the Tzimisce that I wanted to cover. If you have any questions, do let me know in the comments and I will attempt to get back to them. Or, if you want to ask me directly, I am still streaming Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines on Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 PM UK time, and they do almost always devolve into Vampire the Masquerade lore discussions, although weirdly I tend to be better at discussing lore in that context. I think because I'm answering specific questions as opposed to finding myself with just one prompt, and that prompt is Tzimisce. I don't know what the next video will be, or when it'll be. It may be another clan video, possibly Nosferatu, or it may be the first video of me discussing my current campaign, Skelwich by Night. Because I think at this point, certainly, I could at the very least discuss the premise and tell you about the individual characters in the campaign. But I would need to note exactly what I want to tell you about the campaign, and whether or not I want to let you peek behind the curtain, or whether or not I want to inform you guys of things as the campaign unfolds. I'm not sure which, but I'll figure that out later. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you understood it. I hope I explained myself in any possible reasonable way. But that's going to be it from me. I'm going to go to bed. I will see you in the next one. Bye.